The service also continues to be concerned about radicalized Canadians traveling overseas to participate in terrorism-related activities. CSIS is currently aware of dozens of Canadians, many in their early 20s, who have traveled or attempted to travel overseas to engage in terrorism-related activities in recent years.
All right, that was former CSIS Director Richard Fadden talking about the problem of Canadians going overseas to join the jihad. And a lot of people don't believe it until it happens. And you get a story like Damien Claremont, Calgary man, now dead. I think he was on the front page. There he is, front page of the Calgary Sun, his former homeland. City man dies for Al-Qaeda. Why? Well, I guess he went looking for trouble, and he found it. Simon Kent joins us now to talk about this. And Simon, we focus on the Canadian aspect, but this goes around the world, people looking for a cause. They're lost in some ways. Mr. Claremont, who took up the name, I believe, Abdu Al-Kanadai, the Canadian, he was from an Acadian Catholic family, tried to commit suicide. He was lost, found this, latched onto it, and off he went.
He's not alone. If you look at right across what's happening in Syria at the moment, there's people being drawn to that honeypot from all around the world. Just this week, an Australian couple died there, a husband and wife who were in the wrong place at the wrong time and were shelled. And they were actually in direct contravention of Australian law because there's an arms embargo against Syria. Therefore,
and had they taken up the jihad as well?
Oh, gosh,
or were they doing? Okay, so they weren't doing humanitarian work.
Oh, no.
They joined the fight.
They were hot for jihad, and they went over there and were fighting, and they got caught up, and they were in the wrong place and got blown up. But let me use something as an example. Remember the book by George Orwell, Homage to Catalonia? It was all about the Spanish Civil War in the 30s, and George Orwell went over there. He thought he'd pick up arms and fight, but what Orwell describes in that book is a whole lot of idiots who came from all around the world to pick up a weapon and pursue their ideology. There was fascists there were socialists there were communists, there were freedom fighters and people, royalists. He said they all turned on each other in the end, and the whole thing was a hot mess. I think you're finding the same thing in Syria. This gentleman from Calgary would have gone over there full of bravery and full of youthful enthusiasm for jihad, and he doesn't have any familial links there. A lot of this is driven by families and what links and what religion and what sect and where you come from. He would have been quite alone in that.
But he seemed to like it. I want to read out some quotes.
Yes, please.
He did several interviews with Stuart Bell at the National Post, so I want to give Stuart Bell credit. He's an excellent reporter on national security issues. And he told Bell, as for those Al-Qaeda types, they are clearly dominant everywhere you go, but they do not steal or rape or sell drugs or murder or kidnap for ransom and so on. They are also the most effective fighting forces here and are in many cases single-handedly holding off the regime and their friends in many places, while many others sit in the bases and get fat off crime and foreign money aid. He seems to may not have the religious ties, or he did when he converted. He didn't have the family ties to Syria, but he seemed to like what he saw, despite all the evidence that Al-Qaeda in Syria, they're doing some pretty nasty work. And
I think there's plenty of that to go around. You look at all sides of this conflict. It's a bloody murderous mess, and everyone's fighting each other, and it's turning out again, as I alluded to with George Orwell and his writing back in the 30s. This is going to be a race to the bottom between all these different groups and all the different religious groups involved, and so many people from around the world are hot for jihad. This is where they go. And at the same time, the UN this week launched its single biggest appeal for funding to send aid to Syria. As it tears itself apart, people are having to pledge hundreds of millions, not people, sorry, countries are pledging hundreds of millions of dollars to put into this country to try and feed people, to give them the basic necessities. And on top of that, you've got a massive refugee crisis in neighbouring countries.
And look, I have incredible sympathy for those refugees.
Who doesn't?
The ones that were just living peacefully with their neighbors, and we're hearing about people being killed because of their own religion, forced conversions, all of this happening. But I'm not sure that I want to give money to the UN that will then possibly end up in the hands of whether it's the Assad regime or even worse, Al-Qaeda or their affiliates or the Syrian Free Army. Well, I don't mind feeding people, but you have to question where that money would go.
Well, you'd have to. Any reasonable person would. And the UN launched this appeal this week. Let's face it, Syria is verging, if not already arrived. It's a failed state. It is ceasing to function. There's no rule of law, nothing. So where's this money going to go? You're quite right.
Less than a minute left. What does this say that we've got this guy in Syria, we've had the guys in Chechnya and Dagestan, The London, Ontario boys that went over to fight in Mali and Algeria, caught up in jail in Mauritania.
Make it a criminal offence.
What does it say?
Well, the country should make it a criminal offence to pick up arms and go and fight in a third country in a conflict that has nothing to do with you. Put them in jail, because too many people go looking for trouble. They find it, and they find it in the most deadly manner. And then people are at home are left to cry over a lost son, or even as tragically a lost daughter. Don't do it. Stay at home, or if you do it, you risk being put in jail.
All right, Simon, great talking to you. We'll chat soon.